Be real, be yourself, never let anyone tell you what you should do and who you should be. But whatever you are, whoever you are, own it. And don't apologize. Be authentic.
Okay, here we are.
Good evening.
Good evening, Larry. How are you?
I'm great.
It's kind of odd looking at the camera sitting right next to you because I feel like I should be looking at you, but it is what it is.
It is.
So this is something that I'm just going to kind of go into it if that's okay. This was a hard decision to put some of the content out over the past few weeks that we have put out, and not hard because it was hard for us, but hard because we didn't know how other people were going to take it. And one of the things, I've actually got I do a periodic blog, Larry does one, and we shared some of this information on the blog, and I've got another story coming out on Friday, which will kind of share the emotional side of what it took to do this and why we had to do it. But we're going to dive into that tonight, and we'll talk about the things that are difficult to talk about. And that's really what this is. We've been, I just want to say, braggadociously saying that we have lived an unapologetic life for a while now, and we really have, but there have always been these things that we just didn't say, or we said in bits and pieces. And a lot of it just we decided to bring it to the surface. So I'll let you just speak to that before we go into anything else.
Yeah, for me, I mean, there were so many secrets in my past, things that I didn't want people to know because I felt I felt they'd judge me. I felt ashamed. I felt, not good about where I was. And when Jim and I came up with the idea for this podcast, we just felt it's really important to just be unapologetically yourself, I'll speak for us, to be unapologetically ourselves, because you are what you are, and everything that happened made up the person you are today. And I know that there were just a few people that reached out to me when I was going through many of my difficult times in the past, sharing their stories. And if it wasn't for the opportunity for me to hear those stories, I might not be where I am today. So the reason I'm doing this isn't just to air a dirty laundry or anything like that. It's hopefully that someone will hear it, and maybe you'll think of someone and you'll want to share this Facebook Live with them so that they might be inspired to have hope for the future.
Yeah, and we've gone through some things, and it's nice to be all shiny on the outside and have people go, man, I'm envious of what you're doing. You're traveling, you're doing all these things, but there's a lot of, I don't want to say skeletons in the closet, because if there were, they're coming out right now, and they've been coming out over time, but there's pain that you go through to get where you are. And that, the goal of these Facebook Lives was to give people an opportunity to see behind the surface, to see under the facade. And I don't mean facade as like a false front, although that's probably the appropriate definition, but like what we put out, like we also share what it took to get there, because getting there hurts sometimes. It's like working out. We use this analogy all the time. When you work out, you're not building muscle, you're tearing it, right? And it's in the healing of that muscle that strength is created, and that mass is gained. And that's been our story. So Larry, where do you want to start? Do we want to start with your story? Do we want to start with
I have so many stories. You'd have to start with which chapter of which of which story. I feel like I've reinvented and reincarnated myself so many times throughout my life.
Yeah. So there's two things that I really want to talk about. I want to talk about what it's like to be going through a divorce, and it's a divorce that it just, transparency, I never wanted, but it's happened, right? And so here I am, like smack dab in the middle of it. And I also want to talk about why I put out the blog that I put out, And just the outpouring, the responses that I got from that, and like not a little bit of responses, like 1,000 responses. It was pretty significant. And then your story about the decision to, and grateful you didn't, but the decision to take your own life was, I mean, you don't come by decisions like that lightly, nor do you come back from that easily. So can we start there?
Well, actually, I just would like to start, it's going to be unapologetically us. So I just want to get some things out that hopefully will help some people. So I'd like to start with drugs. Like I've used a lot of drugs in my life. And I want to say for anyone out there that's using drugs, when I was using drugs and I entered rehab, and I was in rehab a couple different times, they would always say to me that they would tell me, hey, look around the room, look at the person to your left, look at the person to your right, and 90% of you are going to relapse, or 80% of you won't make it, or whatever figure it was. The odds were
encouraging.
Were stacked. Well, actually, it was encouraging. Even if they had said 99% won't, because as long as you know one person that made it, that's all you have to do, because that person, just laid the groundwork for you. So I'm hoping that maybe I can do that for someone else and say, look, I made it. I used every drug out there, and I was a crackhead. I was on the streets smoking my dope in the hotel rooms, doing, all that shit, all that crap. And I made it.
Larry doesn't curse often.
I don't.
That was so forced. Sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, so I made it. So if someone is out there, or someone out there that's using a pipe or using drugs, and they feel like they're in a dark place, see, when you're, and Jim, you can cut me off because I could go on for a while about this, but it's the shame and the guilt that often gets the addict, because they feel so bad about what they're doing. And when you stop what you're doing, you're still the addict, and people still see you as the loser that you are. But all you can do is you just have that moment in your life. So when I was 1 day clean, nobody believed me, but I couldn't be 2 years clean. I could only be 1 year clean. 1 day clean. That was the best I could do for that day. So you really have to put on blinders, and you really just have to stay focused on what you want. And you got to stop listening to other people. Just listen, find that place within you. That's what worked for me. So the first thing I just want to share in this unapologetically us is I'm also proud of my drug use. Now, okay, a lot of people say, what the heck does that mean? Yep. What I mean by that is that out of my drug use came so many good things. So one of the things that happened was I took custody and adopted the children from my drug dealer. People were like, what? And I can't
make this stuff up.
Right. When I was going down into those neighborhoods, I had 2 drug dealers, both were women. I'd go down, I'd see all these kids on the street. I would hang out with the kids for a bit. Where's their mom? And after a while, when I decided to get, the kids were in the system, and in Arizona where I was living, a mom can sign custody over without going through the courts. And she signed custody to me of these kids, and I put myself through rehab. We were living in a rent by the week studio. And people say, oh, those kids were lucky that they had you. I was lucky that I had them, because they gave me a reason to.
They were your catalyst.
They were my catalyst. And then I became their catalyst. But if it was never for my use of crack cocaine, I would have never met my children. I would have never met my family. I would have never had the most amazing grandkids who I have now. So don't feel shame about where you are. Amazing things can come out of where you are. So just sit with that possibility.
Hey, Jay Becker, I want to put your comment up there. I've known Jay for a number of years, and just a great guy. We were almost kabillionaires together. We thought of Geek Squad before Geek Squad thought of it, and he bailed on me. But that's a whole other story. I'm waiting for his comment to show up. But he put helping someone feel not alone is one of the best things we can do, reaching back to help those struggling with addiction. And man, that's true. But that's just one of the stories. And
You have more stories than divorce, Jim. So
yeah, no, I do, and
I
want to get into this a little bit, and so I'm just gonna let you guys know. So I've got a lot of haters, right? And I've made a lot of mistakes, and so my big thing is I used to, sometimes still do, bite off more than I could chew. And you go into things with the best of intentions, right? That everything is going to work out the way that you want it to work out. And sometimes it doesn't. And those demons, those memories, those skeletons, they'll follow you. And Larry and I say several things. We have a lot of these philosophies or things that we put out, like the shifted reality and mastering the spin and the art of the pivot and the focus 10. And we've got Facebook groups and LinkedIn groups. We've got all these channels where we push content and philosophies. And, we've also got extreme ownership and our take and unapologetically us and get focused. And this is one of those. So we've got all these things, but here's my belief. In order to be truly authentic, you have to cleanse your soul, right? You have to get it all out there. So I'm going to just rattle off a couple of things. And then Larry, if you feel compelled to have us go into anything in particular, we can. But I've been emotionally devastated in my life. I've lost everything several times, lost places to live, lost cars, lost bank accounts, lost everything on my way to where I am now. And it really defines you. No, it directs you. It doesn't define you. But if you hold on to it and you keep it inside and you're afraid to let it come out, like, it will redefine you. And that's not always a good thing. So there's a movie, and I explained this to Larry, and he hadn't seen the movie. So trying to explain it is a whole different level. But I was trying to explain the movie 8 Mile with Eminem to Larry. And it's funny because, if you haven't seen the movie, it doesn't really make any sense. But the premise of this movie was you've got this rapper that makes his living, or is trying to make his living, by getting the words out in these rap battles when the time comes. And he was so locked down by his past and all the things that they would say in these rap battles against him. But at the end of the movie, what he did, and he ended up winning, if you will, was he came up and he went first, and you always want to go last, right? But he went first. And he came up and he said all the things that he wanted to say about the other guy. And then he said everything that he thought the guy might ever say bad about him. And at the end, he did the proverbial mic drop. And he said, look, now say something I didn't already say about me, and throws the mic down. And the guy choked on his words. And in the beginning of the movie, Eminem was the one that choked on his words. So you get tied up in not being able to move forward if you're still holding on to what's in the past.
Yeah. So I have one of the philosophies that I have that I really like to share with people is when you're in a difficult situation, it's never about where you are. It's only about how you think about where you are. And if you can change your thought process about where you are, the where you are-ism begins to change. So for example, when I was using drugs, everybody said it wasn't good. And I knew inherently and instinctively that it wasn't good. But I made a decision at that time to not feel bad about it because I enjoyed the drug use. I enjoyed it. So I just said, for now, I'm going to sit in the enjoyment of using the drugs. Now, I'm not here to advocate for drug use, and I'm not here for any of that. Okay, so I want to be clear about that. But I just said that something good must come of this because I know I'm a good person. See, I didn't want to throw more shit on top of me, and I didn't want to feel worse than I was. So I knew I was a good person. I just said something good is going to come from this. And eventually, after a year of going down into those neighborhoods and developing the relationships with 2 of my drug dealers and both of their children, I ended up deciding to become sober. And because I had a relationship with their moms, I just said, please let me take the kids. They're on the streets. The state had already taken them once. And both moms gave me custody of their kids over the next 6 months. And so something great came of it. And I really believe that something great came of it because I didn't sit in judgment of where I was. Yes, I knew it was wrong. And yes, I wanted to change, but I just held on to the fact that, like, you can call it God or you can call it the universe or a higher power, that as long as I said that I was okay, something good would come. Let me state it another way if I can. I put myself into the receiving mode. We talk about law of attraction. When you're judgmental, when you're in a state of restriction, you tighten up, you block things off. So I just allowed something good to come from it. And because I believe that I allowed it, something great came from it, completely changed my life. It changed the lives of my kids. It's an incredible story. Both moms have been sober for several years. We all have good relationships. We've all, we've all just incredibly benefited from it, because there's no way our lives would have crossed. I mean, someone growing up in a wealthy suburb like I grew up would never have crossed paths with someone like them, and vice versa for them. So the stereotypes and the things we think about other people from other neighborhoods and other races and other socioeconomic backgrounds, we were able to come together through the use of drugs, and we are all so enriched by it. So something great came from it. So if you are in a situation that you don't like financially, emotionally, spiritually, with drugs, just say to yourself, it's going to be okay. Something good is going to come from this. Just hold on and open yourself up to some light. That's my suggestion.
Yeah, no, I love that, Larry. And so the subject of this was no holding back, and why the stories had to be told now. So for me, the reason why the stories had to be told now is so many people, and this is redundant. If you've listened to us for a while, we talk about this a lot, but it's easy to talk about what you went through and how you got through it, and how you're successful now, or you're healed now, or you're, in your case, recovered now. But it's really tough to talk about what you're going through, and the sharing of the different stories that we've had over the past several weeks. It really is about sharing not only what we've gone through, but what we're going through on the journey. And, it's tough sometimes. And there is a freeing, cleansing feeling about just getting it out there. And so let me share the story. So I wrote a blog about the day that I separated from my wife, and it was a painful thing to write. It's been almost 2 years now. Wow, almost 2 years. And it was a painful thing to write, and the emotion of the day of that happening came back to me when the words came out. And, it was my perception, my take, my memories and recollection of what the day was, but I shared it. And thousands and thousands of people saw it. I can tell because it shows you how many people saw it. But the comments, the people that said, "Thank you, I needed this. Thank you, I'm going through this right now." I needed to do that for me in order to truly live the unapologetic life. And in order to go out and say, "Look, I'm free of burden," you have to unburden yourself. Does that make sense, Larry, the way I'm saying it?
Yeah.
So, for me, I had to tell the stories because I had to get them out. All the failures, we lost a business. And when we lost the business, we lost $1 million in the process. A lot of people go, "Oh my God, holy shit, you lost $1 million." And I'm like, "Oh yeah, holy shit, we lost $1 million. That's a lot." But the reality was, we would have lost more had we not made the decision to end it when we ended it. It would have been a bigger loss. So it's freeing sometimes to let that stuff go. And that's for me, that's why I had to get it out now. I don't know. Why did you tell your story?
Well, I told my story because I desperately, it's part of my, life's unfolding purpose, or my mission, or just something I really want to do, is to let people know that are in bad situations that it can all work out. But the first step is just accepting where you are, and not judging it, even though, like, So I'll give you another example. I was living in California in the Hollywood Hills in a beautiful, multi-million-dollar home, and I lost all my money. This was back in 2005 and 2006. I lost everything. And when I say I lost everything, I mean I lost everything. The house, everything. I ended up living out of my car.
Larry's gone. Larry fell offline. I don't know if I'm still online.
Well, tell the story.
But Larry, you just want to squeeze into the story? We are right here. now we're live.
Okay. Anyways, I lost everything and ended up homeless. And this was after I had already recovered from the drugs, etc. Am I good to go, Jim?
Yeah, you're good.
Okay. So here I am again, and everybody's looking at me like, oh man, what a loser, what a failure, everything else. And of course I had my own self-judgment. How could I have lost everything, et cetera, et cetera. But I made a decision that going broke and being homeless was going to be the best thing that ever happened to me. Why? I did not know at that time, but I'm not psychic. So I had a choice. I could either think horribly about the situation, or I could decide that at some point in the future, it was going to be great. So I decided that it was going to be great. And I began to feel a little bit better, not much better, but just a little bit better. Not all the time, but just some of the time a little bit better. And I just opened myself up to the possibilities of what would be. And really, the long story short is when I lost everything, it was a cleansing. First, it introduced me to a different way of life. I became more empathetic and understanding of what it's like to be on the street and how to build yourself back up when you have the confidence and trust of no one, when you have no credit, when you have no phone, et cetera, et cetera. I understood the depth of me that I would have never been able to understand if I hadn't had that experience. I made a decision that it was okay to die because I knew I was going to die anyways. And I thought, what a great opportunity this is. I'm done. I'm broke. I've lost it again. I've been a failure again. I'm going to die. But it was only in the making the decision that I was going to take my own life that I started to actually be free to live again, because I thought, hey, before I take my own life, I'm just going to take the chance to be the me that I've never been. And it just began to be a little bit more fun. So Janis Joplin says it great. Freedom's just another word for nothing left to lose. When you have nothing left to lose, I found total freedom. I can't describe it, and I don't suggest that anyone do like the crazy things that I did, like go broke to experience the freedom. But when you have nothing left to lose, that's when you find the freedom, or at least that's when I found the freedom. And I just began to live, and I began to live differently. And as a result, I chose to live, and I no longer wanted to die. And I built myself back up, and I look back on it, going broke and being homeless was one of the best things that ever happened to me. So I'm appreciative and grateful for it. So wherever you are in life, I'm not saying that you have to go from self-hate to self-love, but you can go from self-hate to just a little bit less hate, and from a little bit less hate to just a little bit more less hate, from a little bit more less hate to just maybe some type of glimmer of hope. From a glimmer of hope, you can get to maybe optimism, and then you fall back, and then from optimism, you get to this. So you continue to just move up, what I call move up the emotional scale.
Yeah, hit refresh and see if that brings you back. And we'll go here. Larry, luckily we're in the same room, oh yeah, there we go. We'll see if it works. Anyway, luckily we're in the same room and we're able to just kind of adapt when technical difficulties happen. Larry's trying to bring himself back into the fray. We'll see. There we go. Give me just a quick second. We'll capitalize Larry's name. Larry, you're terrible at capitalization, I've noticed.
It's because I have low self-esteem. I don't think I deserve capitalization.
I agree.
Anyways, if anyone is watching and anyone has any interest, I do have like an emotional scale that I use where depression is at the bottom and then frustration's a little bit above it, because depression is probably the lowest state you can be in because you're emotionless and you have no energy. So I'd rather feel angry than depressed. I'd rather feel frustrated than angry. So you just continue to move up. It's not about going from from feeling awful to feeling great. It's just a little. You just continue to move in the direction of. So I hope that helped somebody out there.
Well, I will tell you, it helped me hear that perspective. And I've told this story before. I think I may have told you this, Larry, but there's a saying, and the saying is, whatever the mind can conceive and believe, it can achieve. And I was on the phone with somebody one day, and I was trying to remember what the saying was, and it bothered me, and I didn't think to Google it at the time. So I thought about that over and over and over again. And about 2 years later, I would think about this all the time. About 2 years later, I'm on the phone with somebody and I'm trying to remember the saying again. And I kick back in the chair and I look up on my wall, and there's one of those motivational pictures. And guess what was written on the motivational picture? It was, whatever the mind can conceive and believe, it can achieve. And it was right there the whole time, but I wasn't ready to see it. And so, like, I heard your story and I've heard all the things that you said before, but I kind of took it in a little differently this time. But why are we doing this? So let me just, can we wrap this up and bring it in just a little bit? So for me, I want to define what living an unapologetic life is for me. And then we'll talk about why this was relevant. So for me, it's when somebody says, what would you do? I can say, well, this is what I did. Or if they say, this is what I'm going through, I can say, I can relate because I went through this too. It's not being afraid to share anything that you've got going on, any experience that you've had, whether it would be tragic, traumatic, embarrassing, personal, deep. It doesn't matter because you put it out there. And not that it's anybody's business, but it allows me to be able to be me. And look, I have a lot of fun. And like I said in the beginning of this, I also have some haters, and there's some people that probably are justifiable in hating me. And you've got some haters that you've had in the past. And so I think just getting the stories out there gives you permission to move forward free and unburdened. And that's what going in to the last quarter of this year, the last trimester of this year, really, which is just a couple of days away, I wanted to be unburdened. I wanted to be free, to be me, to be authentic and be unapologetic in everything that we talk about and everything that we do. So Larry, I don't know that there's much else to say. We got
that's it. For me, for me, it's not so much about being unburdened, because I'm already unburdened. I'm already good with me. For me, it's about helping someone, that maybe someone is going through something and they'll hear my story and they can grab onto a little bit of the hope.
Yeah. And I'm going to let's wrap this up now and talk about what we've got going
next week.
So I'll set this up and then I'll let Larry talk about it a little bit, and we'll kind of go back and forth here. But we've been setting up for the last several months for how our business was going to evolve, what the Jim and Larry team was going to do and what it was going to be. So if you're listening to this on the podcast, the Jim and Larry Show, or if you're watching it live on Facebook, you may know one aspect of our business. But Larry and I are serial entrepreneurs. We've worked with, dozens and dozens and hundreds of entrepreneurs over our career. We've launched several businesses. And we have a real passion for the small business owner. And a third of our business, a third of the Jim and Larry team, is dedicated to us for your business. So there's Jim and Larry for you, there's Jim and Larry for your business, and then there's us for the community and for the change makers. So we've got a ton of huge announcements coming next week, next Wednesday on Get Focused, which is our Wednesday night feature, September 1st. It is the beginning of the final trimester of 2021. So September 1st, 6:30 p.m. Central Time. And Larry, do you want to share anything else about what we're going to be talking about?
Well, we'll be at Mill and Main in Festus, Missouri, which is about an hour south of St. Louis. We'll be at Mill and Main because Denny Foster is the owner there, and he is one of the 45 change makers we featured this year. And we'll be showcasing his place and sharing some stories of change makers, but also we'll be introducing the first workshops that the Jim and Larry team will be producing in 2021.
Well, under the new concepts, we'll talk about those. And
Yep.
then you guys will have an opportunity to meet some of the members of Revitalize, which is the nonprofit that Larry and we both serve on that board, but we're also supporting this year. So a portion of everything we do goes to support Revitalize, goes to support change makers. You saw Carol C.C. Miller was on here commenting a little while ago. She is one of our change makers also, along with Denny Foster. So it's going to be the beginning of something big. And as we reflect on the years that it's been, we are so looking forward to what is to come. And Larry, I'm going to let you sign us off. Give everybody the social media, how they find us, where they look, all that good stuff.
JimandLarryTeam.com.
That's it?
No, I don't know the other handles. I'm not social media depth like that. I don't. All those little @ signs confuse me.
Fair enough. Well, you can reach us at the JimandLarryTeam.com, and everything will be there. If you're listening to this on the podcast, it's the JimandLarryShow.com. But until then, we are unapologetically signing off. See you guys.
Unapologetically us! With Jim and Larry! Be real, be yourself, and never let anyone tell you what you should do and who you should be.